Angela sat by the bedroom window, staring into the dimly lit street below. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that seemed to echo inside her chest. In the early years of her marriage, such silence had never existed in their home. There had always been laughter, loud, uncontrolled, and sometimes silly. She and David used to talk about everything. Their dreams, their fears, their plans for the future. But now, it felt as though their words had dried up, replaced by polite exchanges about groceries, bills, and schedules. The irony was sharp. Their life looked perfect from the outside. David was a respected professional, the kind of man who commanded admiration when he entered a room. Angela, graceful and warm, had always been described as the lucky wife of a successful man. They lived in a comfortable house, drove good cars, and never lacked for anything material. But what people didn't see, the one truth Angela carried like a secret burden, was that the most important thing had quietly slipped through their fingers: intimacy. At first, the change was subtle. A missed kiss here, a night spent working late there. David would come home, exhausted, and collapse on the couch, while Angela would wait hopefully for a moment of conversation or affection. She often tried to brighten the evenings, cooking his favorite meals, asking about his day, even cracking jokes to lighten his mood. But his answers were short, distracted. His eyes, once sparkling with playful energy, now looked tired and heavy. Angela told herself it was temporary. Work was demanding, and she knew David carried a lot of responsibility. But weeks turned into months and months into years. Their bedroom, once alive with warmth and passion, became nothing more than a space to sleep. They lay side by side, yet worlds apart. Sometimes, when she reached for him, he would murmur, "I'm tired, Angela. Maybe tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. What hurt most wasn't the absence of physical intimacy. It was the growing emotional distance. Angela craved to be seen, to be held not as a formality, but with the love that used to leave her breathless. She missed the way David would surprise her with little notes, or pull her close in the kitchen while she cooked, laughing as if nothing in the world mattered but them. Now, she felt like a shadow, always present but unnoticed. One evening, as Angela folded laundry in silence, she found one of David's old shirts, the one he wore on their honeymoon trip to Italy. Memories rushed back. How they had wandered the streets of Florence, holding hands, stealing kisses under the stars, and dreaming aloud about the future they would build together. Tears stung her eyes. How had they gone from that magical closeness to this emptiness? She began questioning herself. Was she no longer attractive to him? Had she failed as a wife? She scrutinized her reflection in the mirror more often, noticing faint lines near her eyes and the subtle changes of age. She started comparing herself to younger women she saw on television or at David's office parties, wondering if he silently wished for someone else. These insecurities dug deep, even though David had never once spoken of dissatisfaction. His silence was more painful than words could ever be. Yet, beneath her doubt was still a flicker of hope. Angela knew she loved David deeply, and she believed that somewhere beneath his exhaustion and stress, he still loved her too. But love needed nurturing, and theirs was starving. Every night she lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing. She felt her own heart growing heavier with unspoken longing. One particular night, unable to hold it in, Angela whispered into the darkness, "David, do you even see me anymore?" But he was asleep, oblivious to the ache in her voice. Her days followed a monotonous rhythm. She busied herself with house chores, community work, and visits to friends, but nothing filled the void. Sometimes, when she saw couples holding hands in public, she felt an ache so sharp it nearly brought her to tears. She longed not just for physical closeness, but for the companionship of being fully known, fully desired. David, on the other hand, believed he was doing everything right. His days were consumed with meetings, deadlines, and the weight of providing for their future. In his mind, working tirelessly was his way of showing love, ensuring Angela never lacked comfort or security. But what he didn't see was that while he was building walls of material success, Angela was crumbling inside those very walls, starved of the affection that once defined their bond. Their friends often praised them as the perfect couple. At gatherings, Angela forced smiles and played her role convincingly. Nobody suspected the loneliness that gnawed at her heart. Sometimes she wanted to scream, to tell the world that behind closed doors, perfection was nothing but a facade. But pride kept her silent. Angela's turning point came one Sunday afternoon. She found an old photo album while cleaning the attic. Inside were pictures of her and David during their early years of marriage, laughing in the rain, cooking together in their tiny first apartment, lying on the grass in the park without a care in the world. Her fingers traced the smiles in those pictures, and she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was grief. Grief for the love that seemed to have vanished, grief for the woman she used to be, and grief for the distance that no one but her seemed to notice. In that moment, she realized something crucial. Silence was killing her marriage. If she didn't speak, if she didn't fight for what they once had, they would lose it forever. As she wiped her tears, a thought crystallized in her mind. I can't let us fade into strangers. Not without trying. Angela decided then that she would no longer hide her longing or mask her pain behind polite smiles. She would find the courage to reach David, to remind him of what they once shared, and to demand, not with anger, but with love, the closeness she so desperately needed. The silence had gone on long enough. It was time to break it. Angela spent the next few days in a storm of thought. Her decision to break the silence weighed on her mind, but so did the fear of rejection. She wanted to reach out to David, not with anger or accusations, but with tenderness, with the vulnerable honesty of a woman who longed to be loved as she once was. On Friday afternoon, she stood in the kitchen, staring at the clock. David usually returned home around 7. That gave her just enough time to prepare something special. She had decided tonight would be different. Tonight, she would remind him of the life they had built together, of the passion that still burned quietly inside her. Angela pulled out her old recipe book, flipping to a page she hadn't visited in years. David's favorite dish? Rosemary chicken with roasted vegetables. She smiled faintly as she remembered how, early in their marriage, David would hover in the kitchen, sneaking bites before the meal was finished, wrapping his arms around her waist while teasing her about using too much garlic. Back then, cooking wasn't just about food. It was about intimacy, shared laughter, and small moments of love. The kitchen filled with the rich aroma of roasting chicken. Angela set the table with care, bringing out the crystal glasses they had received as a wedding gift but rarely used. She lit candles, dimmed the lights, and placed a small vase of fresh lilies, the flowers David had once brought her every Friday without fail. Then she turned to herself. Angela opened her wardrobe and carefully chose a dress David had always admired, a deep red one that highlighted her curves. She applied light makeup, enough to accentuate her natural beauty, and left her hair loose, just as he liked it. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't just see the tired wife she had become. She saw a woman who still carried fire in her heart. But beneath her preparation was trembling vulnerability. What if he didn't notice? What if he brushed past her efforts the way he had brushed past her subtle signals in the past? What if tonight only deepened her loneliness? She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering to herself, "This isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. Just be honest with him." The sound of keys at the front door jolted her back. David had arrived. Angela's heart raced as she heard his footsteps. He entered the dining room, briefcase in hand, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. He paused when he saw the candlelit table. "Angela?" His voice held surprise, almost confusion. "What's all this?" Angela approached him with a soft smile. "I thought we could have dinner together. Just the two of us." David looked around, then at her. For a fleeting second, Angela thought she saw the warmth of recognition in his eyes, the man who once adored her. But it vanished quickly, replaced by his usual weariness. He loosened his tie and sighed. "It looks lovely. I'm just so tired." Her heart sank, but she pushed forward, determined. "Please, David, just sit. Eat with me. Talk with me. That's all I ask." He hesitated, then finally nodded. All right. They sat at the table. Angela served him, carefully watching for any sign of appreciation. He took a bite and murmured, "This is good." But his eyes drifted to his phone, which buzzed with work notifications. Angela reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "David, could you put the phone away? Just for tonight." Something in her voice startled him. It wasn't demanding, but fragile, like a plea from a heart that had been silent too long. Slowly, he put the phone aside. Angela took a deep breath. Her pulse quickened. She knew this was the moment. "David," she began softly, "do you remember when we used to stay up all night talking? About our dreams, about silly things, about us." He glanced at her, uncertain. "Of course I remember. I miss that," she whispered. "I miss us. I miss the way you used to look at me like I was the only woman in the world. I miss the laughter, the warmth, the closeness. I feel like I've been losing you, little by little, and I don't know how to reach you anymore." David set his fork down, clearly uncomfortable. "Angela, it's not that I don't care. I've just been busy," she finished for him. "Always busy. I know, and I appreciate everything you do for us. But, David, providing isn't enough. I don't just want a roof over my head or food on the table. I want you. I want your touch, your love, your presence. I don't want to be strangers living in the same house." Her voice cracked with emotion. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she didn't look away. She had hidden her pain long enough. Tonight, she would bare her soul. David leaned back, torn between fatigue and guilt. "Angela, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," she replied, reaching for his hand again. "Just hear me. I want to feel close to you again. Not just physically, but emotionally. I want the man I married, the one who made me feel like the most loved woman alive. Tell me, David, do you still see me that way?" Silence stretched between them. Angela's heart pounded painfully. She searched his face, hoping for a spark, a sign. David's eyes softened for a moment, but then he looked down, as though ashamed.
"Angela, I'm tired."
"I don't mean to hurt you. I can't always be what you want." Her chest tightened. His words stung, yet she refused to retreat. "I'm not asking for perfection, David. I'm asking for love, for presence, for something real. Don't you miss it too?" David rubbed his temples, conflicted. He did miss it, deeply, but years of stress and responsibility had buried those feelings. It was easier to hide behind work than to face the fragile intimacy of the heart. Angela's tears finally spilled, but she didn't look away. "If we don't fight for this now, David, I'm afraid one day we'll wake up and realize there's nothing left between us. I don't want that. I can't live like that." For the first time in years, she let him see her raw pain.
No walls. No pretenses.
Just the truth of a woman desperate to save her marriage. David reached out slowly, hesitantly, and took her hand. His grip was weak at first, then firmer, as though he was afraid of losing her. His eyes, tired and heavy, finally met hers. There was no laughter in them yet, no spark of passion, but there was something that hinted at recognition. Angela held onto that glimmer with all her heart. The candlelight flickered across the table, shadows dancing along the walls, but the atmosphere between Angela and David was heavy, suffocating. Angela's hand still rested in his, though David's grip was loose, almost reluctant. For years she had swallowed her pain in silence, but now the words spilled from her like a flood that could not be stopped. "Do you remember?" Angela whispered, her voice trembling. "The nights we stayed awake until dawn? We used to talk about everything, about our dreams, about traveling the world, about growing old together. Do you remember that, David?" He looked at her, eyes filled with weariness. "Angela, of course I remember, but that was years ago. Things change." Her chest tightened as if his words had pierced her. Change doesn't mean disappearing into strangers. Change doesn't mean forgetting how to love. I feel like I've been living with a ghost of the man I married. You're here, but you're not here." David's jaw clenched. The exhaustion in his eyes shifted to something sharper, defensiveness. I work myself to the bone for us, Angela. For this house, for our future. Do you think it's easy? Do you think I enjoy coming home drained every single night? I don't avoid you because I don't care. I avoid you because I don't have the strength left to give. Angela's voice rose, cracking under the weight of her despair. But don't you see? That's all I want. You. Not the house, not the money, not the success. Just you. Your touch, your attention, your love. I'd trade all of this comfort just to have the man who once couldn't wait to hold me. Her tears flowed freely now. Years of swallowed pain spilled across the table. David rubbed his temples, his own frustration boiling. Angela, you act like I've abandoned you. I'm still here, aren't I? I come home every night, don't I? I don't cheat. I don't wander. I'm here, providing, being the husband I promised I'd be. The words cut deeper than he realized. Angela's shoulders shook as she laughed bitterly through her tears. Being here isn't the same as being present. You share this roof with me, yes, but in every way that matters, I've been alone for years. Do you even know what that feels like? To lie next to the man you love and feel completely invisible. David flinched. Her words hit him harder than he wanted to admit, but pride kept him from yielding. So what? You're saying I'm not enough? That everything I do for us doesn't matter because I don't whisper sweet words every night? That's not fair, Angela. Life isn't some fairy tale. We're adults now. We have responsibilities. Angela stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her body trembled, not with anger alone, but with the deep ache of a woman who had endured too much. Responsibilities? She snapped. David, I was never asking for fairy tales. I was asking for love, for something real. Responsibilities don't erase the need for affection, for intimacy. You think I want perfection? I just wanted you to notice me, to remember I exist, to remember I'm not just your wife in name but your partner, your companion, the woman you promised to cherish. Her voice cracked at the last word, and she covered her face with her hands, sobbing. David's chest heaved. He felt anger, yes, but beneath it, guilt and shame stirred. He hated seeing her cry, yet he also hated being accused, as if his sacrifices were meaningless. Angela, he said firmly, trying to steady himself, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. Every day it's meetings, deadlines, decisions. Everyone depends on me, and when I come home I just want peace. I can't be everything you want me to be all the time. She dropped her hands, staring at him with tear-streaked cheeks. I'm not asking for everything, David. I'm asking for something. For you to look at me, hold me, talk to me. Is that really too much to ask of the man I gave my life to? The words hung in the air like a sharp blade. For the first time, David had no immediate response. He sat in silence, his breathing uneven, his eyes locked on the woman in front of him. The woman he had once adored with every ounce of his being, now broken and trembling because of him. Angela shook her head slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper. I've been screaming for you in silence all these years, and tonight I finally used words. But if even now you can't hear me, then I don't know if there's anything left to save. The pain in her eyes struck him deeper than her words ever could. For the first time in years, David felt fear. Not of losing his job or failing his responsibilities, but of losing her. He rose slowly from his seat, conflicted. 1,000 emotions warred inside him. Pride, shame, love, exhaustion. He wanted to defend himself, to insist that his efforts meant something. But deep down, he knew Angela was right. He had been physically present but emotionally absent. He had hidden behind his role as provider, forgetting that marriage was more than provision, it was connection. Still, the weight of his pride held him back. Angela, he began carefully, I don't know how to fix this. I'm not good with words the way you are. I can't always say what you want to hear. Her eyes hardened. Then show me with actions. Show me that I still matter. Because right now, I don't feel like your wife, I feel like your roommate. And I can't live the rest of my life as just invisible. The room fell into silence again. Not the comfortable silence of two souls at peace, but the heavy silence of two hearts colliding, each bleeding in its own way. David wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but he hesitated. His hand twitched, then withdrew. Angela noticed, and the hesitation hurt more than any words could. She turned away, walking toward the window. The candlelight flickered against her figure, casting her in shadows. David stood behind her, torn apart by the distance he had created but unsure how to close it. "Do you still love me, David?" she whispered without turning around. The question hung in the air like a final test. David's throat tightened. Of course he loved her. He had never stopped. But in that moment, the words felt heavy, trapped behind years of neglect and pride. He opened his mouth, but the silence stretched too long. Angela closed her eyes. "That's what I thought," she murmured. Her voice was soft, but it shattered him. In that instant, David realized this was more than a fight. This was a breaking point. If he didn't act, if he didn't find the courage to fight for her, he might lose her forever. For Angela, the confrontation had ripped open the wounds she had carried silently. It hurt, but within that pain was a strange sense of relief. At least the truth was finally spoken. At least the walls of silence had been shattered, even if what lay beyond them was messy and uncertain. And so they stood, hearts raw and exposed, at a fragile crossroads. One step toward healing or one step toward collapse. That night, after their confrontation, the house felt heavier than ever. The candles had burned low on the dining table, casting faint shadows across the walls. Neither Angela nor David had eaten much. Their plates sat untouched, a silent witness to the storm that had erupted between them. Angela had gone to bed early, her body curled away from his side of the mattress. David remained in the living room, sitting in the dim glow of the lamp, staring at nothing. His chest felt tight, as though the very air was pressing down on him. Her words echoed relentlessly in his mind. "I feel like I've been living with a ghost of the man I married. I've been screaming for you in silence. Do you still love me, David?" The last question hit him hardest. It wasn't that he didn't love her. He did, fiercely, in ways he had never confessed. But love was not something he had shown. Somewhere along the way, he had convinced himself that working harder, earning more, and securing their future was the greatest form of love he could give. He had buried affection beneath responsibility, assuming Angela would understand. But she hadn't just wanted a provider. She had wanted a partner, a lover, a man who could hold her when the world felt heavy. David leaned back in the chair, his hands covering his face. He remembered the early years, the way Angela used to laugh with her whole body, throwing her head back when he made a bad joke. He remembered the feel of her hand slipping into his when they crossed the street, the way she used to press her head against his shoulder during long drives. He remembered their honeymoon in Italy, the way she danced with him under the moonlight in a tiny village square, her eyes glowing with pure joy. When was the last time I made her laugh like that? When was the last time I made her feel cherished? The realization struck like a knife. He had been absent, not because he stopped loving her, but because he had let the grind of life blind him to what mattered most. And now she was slipping away. The thought of losing Angela, really losing her, made his stomach churn. She wasn't just his wife. She was his anchor, the person who had believed in him when he was nobody. He remembered the early days of his career, when money was tight and rejection was constant. Angela had stood by him, working late hours herself, encouraging him when he doubted everything. She had been his strength. And now, because of his neglect, she was breaking. David rose from the chair, restless. He paced the room, fists clenching and unclenching. Pride urged him to defend himself, to cling to the belief that he was already doing enough. But another voice, quieter yet truer, whispered that Angela was right. He had failed her in the simplest but most vital way: presence. Finally, unable to bear the silence, he walked to the bedroom. The room was dark except for the faint light spilling through the curtains. Angela lay on her side, her back to him, her breathing slow and uneven. He stood there for a long moment, unsure if she was asleep or silently weeping. His heart ached. Slowly, cautiously, he slipped into bed beside her. For a while, he just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the invisible wall between them. Then, gathering his courage, he reached out and touched her hand. Angela flinched slightly but didn't pull away. "Angela," David whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry." Her body tensed, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then, softly, "Sorry for what?" He swallowed hard. The words felt heavy, foreign, but necessary. "For not seeing you, for not hearing you, for forgetting that being your husband isn't just about paying bills or putting food on the table. It's about loving you completely, and I've failed at that." Angela turned slowly to face him. Her eyes glistened in the faint light, red from crying. She searched his face, as though trying to determine if his words were real or just a moment of guilt. "Do you mean that?" she asked quietly, her voice fragile. "Yes," David breathed. His hand trembled as he held hers tighter. "I mean it. I've been so caught up in trying to carry the world on my shoulders that I forgot the only thing that truly matters is right here in my arms. I thought working harder was love. But I see now it's not enough. You deserve more. You deserve me. All of me. And I want to try again, Angela. If you'll let me." Tears spilled from her eyes. For years she had begged silently for these words, longed for this recognition. Hearing them now didn't erase the hurt instantly, but it cracked the wall of despair inside her. "I don't want perfection, David," she whispered. "I just want to feel like I matter to you, like I'm not invisible." "You're not invisible," he said quickly, his voice firm now, filled with conviction. "You are everything. You've always been everything. I just forgot how to show it. But I swear to you I'll change. I'll make time. I'll hold you again, talk with you again. I don't want to lose us, Angela." For the first time in years, she saw vulnerability in his eyes. Not the tired, distant gaze she had grown used to, but a raw sincerity that reminded her of the man she had fallen in love with. She leaned into him slowly, resting her head against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, tentative at first, then stronger, as though he was afraid to ever let go again. They lay like that in silence, but it was no longer the silence of absence. It was the silence of healing, of hearts beginning to remember how to beat together. They spoke softly into the night, not about work or bills, but about their fears, their disappointments, and their hopes. Angela admitted how invisible she had felt, how much it had hurt to live in a home without love. David confessed how he had buried himself in work out of fear of failing her, fear of not being enough, fear of the future. In their honesty, the walls that had separated them began to crumble. Hours passed, but neither noticed. For the first time in years, they were truly present with each other. Angela felt seen, and David felt lighter, as though a weight he had carried alone was finally shared. By dawn, as soft sunlight filtered into the room, they were still lying close, hands intertwined. Their problems were not magically solved, but something had shifted. Angela no longer felt invisible, and David no longer felt alone in his burdens. Together, they had taken the first fragile step toward rebuilding what had almost been lost. Angela closed her eyes, a small smile touching her lips. For the first time in a long while, hope flickered in her heart. And for David, awakening wasn't just about realizing what he had done wrong. It was about rediscovering what he had almost lost, the love of his life. The morning after their long night of honesty felt different. Angela woke to the warmth of David's arm still wrapped around her waist. For years, she had grown used to waking alone, even when he was beside her. His body turned away, his mind already on the day's tasks. But this morning, she stirred and felt the steady rhythm of his breathing close to her. As she shifted slightly, David's eyes opened. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he gave a small, almost boyish smile, the kind she hadn't seen in years. "Good morning," he whispered. Angela's heart fluttered at the simplicity of it. "Good morning," she replied softly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. That day marked the beginning of their slow, deliberate journey back to one another. Small changes, big impact. David started with small gestures. The following evening, he came home earlier than usual. Angela, who had grown accustomed to the sound of the door opening late at night, was surprised to hear his footsteps just as the sun was setting. "You're home early," she said, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged with a sheepish smile. "I told the office I had somewhere important to be. And I did, here with you." Angela's lips parted in astonishment. It was such a simple choice, yet it meant everything. That night, they cooked dinner together, bumping shoulders in the kitchen like they used to in the early days of their marriage. David chopped vegetables while Angela teased him for being slow with the knife. He laughed. An honest, deep laugh that filled the kitchen, and Angela found herself laughing too. It felt like rediscovering a language they had both forgotten how to speak. Learning to talk again. Conversations that once revolved around schedules and obligations began to blossom into something more. Angela asked him about his childhood dreams, the ones he used to share with her late at night, and he surprised her by admitting he still carried some of them, quietly tucked away. "Remember how I used to talk about opening a small cafe one day?" he asked one evening, his eyes distant with memory. Angela smiled. "Of course I remember. You wanted to serve the best coffee in town, with jazz music playing in the background." He chuckled. "I thought it was silly, but sometimes I wonder if I traded too many of my dreams for security." Angela reached across the table and took his hand. "Dreams aren't silly, David. Maybe one day, when we're ready, we can revisit that dream together." Her words lit something in him, a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in years. For Angela, the joy came not just from the content of the conversation but from the fact that he was finally opening his heart again. Rediscovering intimacy. Physical closeness returned slowly, tenderly. At first, it was simple. David reaching for her hand during walks, brushing a strand of hair from her face, holding her a little longer when they embraced. Each gesture carried weight, a silent promise that he was present, that he saw her. One night, as they sat on the couch watching an old movie, Angela leaned her head against his shoulder. To her delight, David didn't stiffen or retreat as he had so many times before. Instead, he kissed the top of her head and whispered, "I've missed this." She smiled against his chest. "So have I." That evening, they kissed like they hadn't in years, slow, unhurried, filled with rediscovered passion. It wasn't about perfection or fireworks. It was about remembering the comfort and excitement of being close, of being wanted. Angela felt tears slip down her cheeks, not from sadness but from relief. David noticed and kissed them away gently, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world. For Angela, it felt like coming home. A new rhythm. Weeks turned into months, and their home began to feel alive again. They made rituals, Saturday morning walks through the park, Sunday evenings cooking a new recipe together, weeknight check-ins where they would sit with cups of tea and talk about their days. Angela noticed the difference in herself. She no longer carried the heaviness of invisibility. She felt radiant again, cherished, valued. Even her friends commented on the glow in her face, though they had no idea of the struggles she and David had overcome. For David, the changes brought unexpected peace. He realized that balancing work and love wasn't impossible. It simply required intention. He started setting boundaries with his job, refusing to sacrifice every ounce of his energy at the altar of success. In doing so, he found himself happier, less burdened. Loving Angela actively didn't drain him, it strengthened him. The test of consistency. Of course, there were still challenges. Old habits didn't vanish overnight. Some evenings, David came home tense and tired, tempted to retreat into silence. But Angela, instead of letting the distance grow, would gently remind him, "Talk to me, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Don't shut me out." And he listened. Sometimes the conversations were short, but they mattered. One evening, when work had been especially brutal, David collapsed on the couch and muttered, "I feel like I'm failing on every front." Angela sat beside him, taking his hand. "You're not failing, you're trying. And I'd rather have you tired but present than wealthy but absent." Her words disarmed him, reminding him again of what he had nearly lost. Rekindled flame. Months after their turning point, Angela and David attended a friend's wedding. As the music played and couples filled the dance floor, Angela hesitated, watching the younger pair sway to the melody. Then David stood, extended his hand, and bowed slightly. "May I have this dance?" he asked with a playful grin. Angela blinked, stunned by the gesture. Slowly, she placed her hand in his, and he led her to the dance floor. As they moved together, the world seemed to melt away. David held her close, his forehead resting against hers, and whispered, "I don't ever want to stop dancing with you, Angela. Not in life, not in love." Her eyes filled with tears, but her smile shone brighter than ever. "Then don't. Just keep holding me." And in that moment, surrounded by music and laughter, Angela realized something profound. Their love wasn't the same as it had been in their youth. It was deeper, tested, and renewed. They had walked through silence, through conflict, through near loss, and had emerged stronger. The flame between them had been dimmed, but not extinguished. Now it burned with a steady glow, warm, enduring, and alive. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was more than enough.